Hello there and welcome to After the Games here on Flow Sports 1. My name is Vidya Ramphal. We hope you certainly have enjoyed the weeks of coverage at the Commonwealth Games 2018, but now it is time to talk more about it and analyze how that affects the Caribbean narrative at the Commonwealth Games. With me I have the president of CANOC, Brian Lewis, and he is here to tell us more about his perspective on the games itself. Nice to have you here once again, Brian.
It's a pleasure to be here, and it's great to be discussing the Gold Coast 2018 Commonwealth Games. I mean, it was awesome for the Caribbean, and it was tremendously exciting.
Yeah, awesome indeed. There were so many firsts, which we'll talk about later on. But CANOC must be very pleased. What have you been hearing from your member states as to how things went at the Gold Coast?
Absolutely fantastic. We have received very positive feedback from the people of the Caribbean, and that's important because they got an opportunity to see, I think for the first time in memory, live action that would have focused a lot on their Caribbean athletes representing the region in a very positive way, and there's a lot to celebrate across the 11 days over there in Gold Coast, with I think 9 of the Caribbean countries getting on the podium, and 8 of them actually getting gold medals, so that we would have had the Caribbean small island states, so to speak, the anthems playing and the flags being raised. Absolutely fantastic, and I know that the Caribbean people have appreciated the partnership between CANOC, the Caribbean Association of National Olympic Committees, and Flow Sports.
Yeah, certainly, and we got some very good feedback in terms of the coverage of it. People were fascinated by so many of the sports. I mean, for the first time, from my perspective, first time I'm seeing lawn bowls. Well, we really enjoyed that. We got into that, and there were some Caribbean competitors in some new sports there also. Yeah. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But in terms of the man on the street, I know you're a man of the people. You're always out there. What were you hearing from them about these games?
Positive.
Yeah.
As I said, the fact that they were able to, in the main, see the games, see the Caribbean athletes across the various countries and jurisdictions in their living rooms. There were viewing parties. There were a lot of good things happening. Of course, there was always something to comment on. There were humorous moments. Like I heard one that it really wasn't the fault of Flow Sports or CANOC, but it had to do with the semi-finals in the swimming, when for some reason the host broadcaster cut away at a very crucial moment, and Dylan Carter's father, Everett, was so annoyed he threw the television in the swimming pool, Well, but as I said, that wasn't the fault of either CANOC or Flow Sports. It was really the host broadcaster at times. They were doing some very interesting things and focusing on some very things. But I think in the end it worked out very well in terms of the key moments. And as I said, the Caribbean people thoroughly enjoyed it. And from a CANOC perspective, we were very happy about the decision made to partner with Flow Sports in bringing the Gold Coast 2018 live and direct to the people of the Caribbean. So
well, it worked out well for Dylan Carter. He did get the silver medal for Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes, but that was a hilarious moment.
Yeah, it certainly is. There were many.
Anyway.
Yeah, the people have been talking a lot about all the different moments, and we'll talk about a lot of those moments coming up in the games itself. But we want to also focus on some of the firsts that we saw in these games. Now, a lot of things happened. We saw some new things happen in terms of medal winnings. We saw competitors in new areas winning medals. I mean, the one that stood out for me was the picture of the Jamaican athlete, Aisha Prod, on the podium winning the gold medal in the steeplechase. And there were 2 very glum-looking Kenyans around her, so they would have been expecting to win that. That image itself really stood out for me. And it's one of the areas that Jamaica is not known for, but here we have this young lady winning the gold medal in it.
I think what was extremely pleasing about the Gold Coast 2018 Commonwealth Games on a whole was the diversity of performances across the spectrum of the Caribbean. The steeplechase in particular was a very significant one historically. And the repercussions or the response from that wasn't only the look on the faces of the Kenyan athletes. It was the Kenyan president of the Commonwealth Games Association. He was heard to remark that, this is unbelievable. Kenya losing a steeplechase gold medal to Jamaica is like Jamaica and the Caribbean losing a 100-meter medal to Kenya. And they really took it personal. In fact, if you looked at the games, after that steeplechase debacle, from Kenya's perspective, but of course from the Caribbean perspective, it was like,
joy.
wow.
Yeah.
It was like you looked at one another, you high-fived, and you really saw that? Did that really happen?
Yeah.
We mean in the Caribbean.
That's
because
right.
again, once the different countries, Trinidad and Tobago is not in it, or Barbados, it's about us, it's about the Caribbean. We, the Caribbean, we really beat Kenya in a steeplechase final at the Commonwealth Games. But a repercussion was that is if you looked at the performances of Kenyan athletes, after that, they were like 1, 2, 3. Every distance race after that, they were 1, 2, 3, dominating the pace of the race because
nothing for granted
obviously
after that,
the riot act was read to the Kenyan athletes after that historic win by Jamaica. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it certainly was. Well, we'll have some more on some Caribbean first on the program, so stay with us. That's coming up. Welcome back to After the Games, our review of the 2018 Gold Coast Commonwealth Games. And we were talking before the break about some of the first that we saw from the Caribbean at these Commonwealth Games. Brian Lewis is our special guest today, and we want to talk about Bermuda because, of course, there was a young lady that won the very first medal, gold medal that is, at these Commonwealth Games. That is Karen Duffy. She won the women's triathlon, and that was a huge moment for her country and certainly for the Caribbean. And it really set the tone for these games.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
A triathlon is normally a big event. You have the big countries that pride themselves on being the leaders in that, whether it is Australia, New Zealand, England, UK. And to have a Caribbean athlete winning the triathlon gold medal, and as you said, to set the tone, it was absolutely, it was really inspirational motivation for the whole region. And I remember talking to the president of the Bermuda Commonwealth Games Association, Judy Simmons, and she was absolutely elated. And that the energy, the positive energy that getting on the podium brings is not only with the athletes and the fans, it's amongst the officials and stuff. It's a validation sometimes of the effort and work that goes into the background and the strategic decisions that have been made. I mean, it's no secret that sport administrators in the Caribbean, I suppose sports administrators all over the world, but sports administrators in the Caribbean who basically do it voluntary, and the Caribbean Association of National Olympic Committee, which is also acts as the Commonwealth Games Association umbrella body, is no exception. And the medals give that injection of energy, and it transfers throughout the entire region at the level of the officials, the media, the fans, the athletes. Absolutely, it was tremendous. As I said, this particular Gold Coast Commonwealth Games for the region as a whole, I don't know whether it is because of the economic challenges or whatever, but whether it is because of social media, the flow sports coverage, but there was a different vibe about it. There was an air of expectancy that our athletes, the region's athletes, will rise to the occasion, and that was absolutely very inspirational motivation. And as I said, yeah, the Bermuda triathlon gold medal kind of set the stage. Now the ball was raised, the Bermudan flag was raised, and now everybody was saying, right, you know, it's let's follow, let's make sure that we get our chance, and everybody sees the opportunity. It was tremendous. Credit to the Caribbean region again.
Yeah, it certainly was a tremendous start to the Commonwealth Games. Now, you talked before the break about the young Jamaican lady, Aisha Prod, who won the steeplechase, and the effect it had not on the Caribbean alone, but on the Kenyan team. As you said, the riot act was
yeah,
a
wake up for them, man. Jamaica, steeplechase. We got beat by a Jamaican, the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Nah.
Oh, why you're so surprised. But anyway, they're known for their speed.
Steeplechase?
Yeah,
anyway, we leave that there.
Yeah, we'll leave that
tremendous. Steeplechase?
Yeah.
I mean, if you had a bet before the game started that the Caribbean would medal in the steeplechase.
That would be the longest of long shots.
Correct is right.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, whenever you pass at the Hazley Crawford Stadium here in Port of Spain and you see the pit for the steeplechase, you wonder, is it ever going to be used? Because we hardly see that here. But would you feel that this would inspire more athletes now to get into this event?
Obviously, any success that is as widely covered as the Gold Coast 2018, the coverage that was done by Flow Sports, any event that does that, and when you have this level of success, it inspires the young people. I mean, somebody was telling me they've been living in a particular area for the last year. This is in Trinidad and Tobago, just yesterday, and they were telling me that it's the first time in the last year that they saw children in the neighborhood running 100-meter races.
Wow.
And particular young girls. Everybody wants to be Michelle Lee Ahi from a Trinidad and Tobago perspective. And I'm quite sure that impact was felt across the Caribbean region.
Well, let's talk about Michelle Lee Ahi, as you mentioned her name there. That historic gold medal for Trinidad and Tobago, first woman to win a gold medal in the 100 meters at the Commonwealth Games. That was massive. She was the favorite for the race, and you know how favorites tend to buckle under pressure, except for Usain Bolt. Apparently, he just seems to revel in it. But she held her own in the race. She got a good start, and she went on to win. What was your reaction when you saw that?
Michelle Lee Ahi is a very driven and determined individual. And, you know, in 2014, she did not do as well as it was anticipated. She also was one of the favorites in 2014 at the 2014 Commonwealth Games in Glasgow. And she obviously carried that drive and hunger for the last 4 years. And she rose to the occasion. She was very focused and disciplined, and she created history for Trinidad and Tobago. But more importantly, what was great was that you had 3 women from Trinidad and Tobago in the final and 3 women from Jamaica.
That's right.
Out of the 8 finalists, 6 were from the Caribbean. And at the end, the podium was Trinidad and Tobago, Caribbean, Jamaica, second and third Caribbean. So in the context of the Gold Coast 2018, it was absolutely tremendous that the Caribbean dominated the podium.
And then, of course, there was a negative side to that story. Just days after that, there
Negative
was
where?
Negative in Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay, not throughout the Caribbean.
Not throughout the Caribbean,
Okay.
yes, where her name was dragged into a debate that has been raging here in Trinidad and Tobago, and many were left dismayed by that. What did CANOC see from that?
Well, from that was an interesting situation. From a Trinidad and Tobago Commonwealth Games Association position, we would have taken a particular stance. We were fully supportive of Michelle Lee Ahi. From a Trinidad and Tobago perspective, the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee, which is also the Trinidad and Tobago Commonwealth Games Association, we are we take very important the Olympic Charter Principle 6 of non-discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation. We advocate a lot for fair and equal treatment for LGBTQ, so that we had no problem in taking an uncompromising stand in support of Michelle Lee Ahi. in the context of the Caribbean-wide perspective, that whole particular issue is still generating a lot of debate across the Caribbean region that goes beyond sport. And, so there's a Trinidad and Tobago approach to that, and then there's a Caribbean-wide approach to it, which CANOC must respect the different views across the region and the various societies across the region. Sport cannot operate in isolation, and obviously that whole particular debate is an ongoing one in Trinidad, in the societies throughout the Caribbean. So we'll see how it goes.
Yes. And another one of the Caribbean issues, which was certainly very topical last year, of course, the hurricanes that passed through. And one of the athletes in particular who got the gold medal at these games was affected by that, Karen McMaster of the British Virgin Islands. Now, his coach actually died during the passage of Hurricane Irma, and he dedicated the gold medal to his coach. That certainly was one of the very touching, inspirational stories from these games.
Very profound moment.
Yeah.
The story of Mr. Young McMasters and his coach, Mr. Samuel. Very unfortunate, and the whole backstory of how the athlete was so traumatized by the death of his mentor, his coach, a father figure that he actually wanted to give up. And his story is one of the stories that I would like to see told throughout the Caribbean, because it is about responding in a very deep way to adversity and tragedy. He went on, he was convinced to go on and to keep on, that his coach would want him to do it. He then transferred his base because, of course, there was devastation. Stadium, the facilities were destroyed. So he then had to go to the States. And, he made a very profound statement after. He said that his motivation is his country. And that, he also made a very important statement that I think every country in the Caribbean and every sport fan in the Caribbean should take due notice of. He said this. He said, I know that whether I had won a medal or finished last in that final, my country would still love me. And that's a very deep statement, because at times, as you know, sometimes athletes in the particular countries feel that once they don't do well, they receive very severe criticism. And, there were two elements, as I said, to repeat. One, that he was doing it for his country, British Virgin Islands, BVI, and that he knew that his country would respect the fact that he would have done his best, and they would love him whether he brought home a medal or not. And that's very deep and profound, and I give credit to the president of the British Virgin Islands, Ephraim Penn, and his team there, including Lloyd Black, because, as I said, for them to rebound from what would have happened in Hurricane Irma, to actually carry a team to the Gold Coast Commonwealth Games is a real credit to their resilience and indomitable will. And it wasn't only British Virgin Islands, you had Dominica.
That's right.
Getting on the medal table.
Twice, yeah.
Silver and a bronze.
Yes.
And again, the Billy Doctorow, well-known former cricket umpire.
That's right. Now retired, yes.
Is the president now of the Dominica Commonwealth Games Association and Olympic Committee. And again, to see the emotion, because succeeding on a medal at these games, whether it be the Commonwealth Games or any other games, the Olympic Games, has very deep symbolic meaning for a lot of countries. It means something to them. And in the context of the devastation of Hurricane Irma, and there were other Caribbean countries that may not have medals, that they turned out and was represented at the Gold Coast 2018. It was it was a tremendous psychological and deep emotional moment, even for Antigua and Barbuda.
Yeah, it certainly was.
And some of the other countries that were hit in a very real and significant way by Hurricane Irma. I think it was no secret that the Caribbean was very, there was tremendous damage and loss of life. I think 100 and something lives were lost in the region, and Mr. Samuels was one of them. So, I mean, that was a very, as I said earlier, a very profound and deep moment, and one that, again, was inspirational for the Caribbean athletes and the Caribbean coaches that were representing the individual countries, but collectively, the Caribbean at the Gold Coast 2018 Carnival game.
Yeah, big moment for both countries,
Huge
especially
moment,
to Dominica, where Theo Lafond and Jordanis Garcia got the first 2 medals for Dominica. We'll have more on Caribbean first, up next.
First time in steeplechase history, men's or women's, a Jamaican has taken the gold medal.
Welcome back to After the Games here on Flow Sports 1 Video Ramble alongside Brian Lewis, the CANOC president. Now we're talking about some of the firsts for the Caribbean, Brian, and we certainly went through, there were quite a few of them. We went through a few of them already. Let's, of course, go across to Guyana, where Troy Doris won the high jump gold, the gold medal for Guyana in the men's triple jump. That is Guyana's first medal, gold medal since 2002, and their 4th overall. That certainly was a brilliant performance. And you're seeing a lot more. And don't forget that also the Dominican athlete Garcia also got the silver medal there. So these are some of the non-traditional events that we're seeing Caribbean athletes medaling in.
Well, it's more, you would have had Caribbean athletes from time to time performing
yes.
well in this, but in terms of the
Medals, that's
diversity,
right.
and I think this is something that we must recognize. You know, have across the board countries stepping up. You have Guyana, you have, as you said, Dominica. So it was in a number of the events, you had Caribbean athletes going neck and neck in terms of from the Commonwealth perspective, and that again was a sign of positive development in terms of the overall sporting landscape in the Caribbean. You know, again, the Guyana Olympic Committee president and the Commonwealth Games, because in most of the islands, I think I mentioned before, the Olympic Committee also doubles up as the Commonwealth Games Association. Yassim Juman and Hector Edwards, former top cyclist. Again, it was to see again, you know, the support they were giving their athletes, the elation that they felt, because it was an indication that notwithstanding whatever challenges, in this particular case, Guyana, they've been making progress. And that was absolutely fantastic. I think from the overall Caribbean perspective, I think it really augurs well for the future. I think that some of the traditional countries that would have done well in the region, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, the Bahamas, I think that you will see increasingly more competition and it becoming extremely more competitive from the Caribbean itself. And I think that is absolutely fantastic because, of course, if it's not going to be Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, or Barbados, Guyana, Antigua, St. Lucia, Dominica, BVI, the more Caribbean countries that can get on the podium, the more it will act as an inspiration and motivation to the youth and young people of the Caribbean.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of inspiration in St. Lucia because Laverne Spencer, of course, got an historic gold medal for St. Lucia at the Commonwealth Games. if there's anyone who could represent or get the award for persistence, it will be Laverne Spencer. She's 33 now, 2 bronze medals, and now the gold medal.
Most certainly, an example of as you said, perseverance. It was also an example of, I think, for women in sport in the Caribbean, because usually, there is always this societal pressure put on females in terms of sport and fitting the traditional view and the conservative view of what a woman should be doing and her role in Caribbean society. And here you have someone who has dedicated a whole life to being the best that she can be, and that was it occurred at the Commonwealth Games level, with her finally mounting the top of the podium, receive the gold medal, have her country's anthem played and flag raised. Tremendous for St. Lucia. I mean, I was very happy for Fortuna Belrose, Senator Fortuna Belrose, who is not only a senator in the government of St. Lucia, but the president of the St. Lucia Olympic Committee and Commonwealth Games Association, and also a regional vice president of the Commonwealth Games Federation. So it was absolutely, it was an elation for her. You also had the hard-working Secretary General of St. Lucia, who is also an executive member of the CANOC board, Alfred Emmanuel. Again, it was a just reward for a lot of effort being done by the athletes and the coaches and the officials in St. Lucia.
Yeah, Laverne Spencer, certainly her name down in history now. Now, across in Grenada.
They were dancing in Castries.
Yeah, I'm sure there was. There was also a lot of dancing in Grenada when Lyndon Victor won the decathlon. Didn't come out as one of the favorites. He and his brother, Kurt Felix, they also were in that competition, and they have their own little sibling rivalry going on there. Now, Lyndon, of course, got the gold medal, and Kurt finished in 4th place. Another big moment for Grenada there. And then there was Anderson Peters, the youngster who has been outstanding in the Flo Carifta Games over the years. Now he ascended the podium in the javelin in the bronze medal.
Again, for Grenada, they have focused a lot in recent years on sports, but track and field in particular. They have hosted, as you said, the Flo Carifta Games. They have a stadium, and they're obviously making good use of it. And again, it was a tremendous example. These athletes are role models to the youth and young people of the Caribbean. That says, in a very strong and powerful way, that they can follow their dreams through sport, and that they could achieve significant things for their countries, for the region, and for their society. And again, it was in the stadium, it's happening on the track. You know that Flow Sports is covering it live, so the people across the region, they are cheering. But to actually see the joy and the elation and the leap in front of thousands of people of Vida Bruno, the Secretary General of Grenada, Commonwealth Games Association, and President Royston Leha. Again, it's touching, because it's uninhibited, the joy and everybody waving their respective countries' flags and the high fives taking place. They said, yeah, Viva Grenada, but one Caribbean.
Yes, that's right. So outstanding stuff from countries all across the Caribbean, winning medals in some first. Karen Duffy, Aisha Prod, we talked about a lot of these. Now, in terms of diversity, the areas where we saw more competition in, not necessarily winning medals, but we saw more competition in. One that really a lot of people commented on was, of course, lawn bowls, which is the first time I've ever seen it. I don't know if you've seen it before.
You mean actually lawn bowls?
Yes,
no,
that's right.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Yeah, we have seen it because it's a staple.
That's right.
On the Commonwealth Games sport program, but it is not something that the Caribbean. It's not a Caribbean sport.
I could try it. I mean, I don't know. We've never had a tradition of it here.
But let me tell you, the reggae lawn bowlers, as they were called.
Yes, that's right.
I mean, they really energized this lawn bowls competition. They were the talk of the town in terms of lawn bowls. And a lot of the Caribbean people who was like by the end of the game, a lot of Caribbean countries were saying, well, hey, maybe this is something we can do because we have space and stuff. It was well interesting. Jamaica brought that Caribbean vibe and spice to what usually has been a very staid, traditional, conservative event, lawn bowl. So that was interesting, very interesting to see.
Yeah.
As I said, I myself was a little bit intrigued by it, paying attention to it because, of course, you want to give support to the Caribbean. But
well, who knows? It could be coming to a country near to you in the Caribbean somewhere. So we'll see how that progresses.
I hope you're not saying that lightly. You might be very.
Well, who knows? I like to give it a try. I mean, I'm not much of an athlete, but it's something I could compete in a few years' time. Who knows? But as you talked about Jamaica, the netball, the bronze medal for Jamaica in netball was huge. And when you consider that they only lost out to the eventual gold medalist England by 1 goal in the semi-finals, it leaves you wondering what could have been.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the shots of the devastation that the Jamaican netballers would have felt at the end of that game. It was, I know that netball, Jamaica is the flag bearer for the Caribbean region in the netball world. And I know that they would have gone into this Commonwealth Games really feeling that they had a shot at winning the gold medal. When you consider that they lost to England very narrowly, that's an understatement, right? And I think England went on
to win by 1 goal again. So between just among those 3 countries, 1 goal separating.
So that you can imagine that it's really a moment when Jamaica, it's one of those sporting moments when you look back and you have, it's like these bad dreams and nightmares because you keep replaying the what if moments. So I think that would have been a particular event where the region on a whole, we really felt that we had a real opportunity to win the gold medal. But that is sports for you. It's not an exacting science. So congratulations to Jamaica on the effort that they made. I mean, they would have gone on during the course of the 11 days to get compensation. They won, I think, 27 medals in all, 7 gold, and they led the region in terms of medal haul. So I know for their president, Christopher Somoda, that it would be a bittersweet kind of situation. And also, that the president of the International Netball World, the World Netball, is a Jamaican, Ms. Roan. So I can imagine that she was
over the moon with that performance, yeah.
Well, I think that she would have had very strong expectations that they would have won the gold medal, but that happens and they will hopefully build stronger from here. But yeah.
Yeah, well, netball, of course, you mentioned that Jamaica is the strength of the Caribbean. Now, some other areas that you're seeing more participation in is in the pool itself.
Correct.
More countries performing in swimming and also in diving.
Yeah, I think Jamaica, again, they had a diver in Rio. I know now with the aquatic center here in Trinidad and Tobago and with the diving element of it, is very likely that if the Caribbean, we focus on that, we could possibly use that center there in Couva as a regional center for diving. So I'm confident that as years go by, in years to come, we'll be seeing more Caribbean countries participating in diving. But as you said, in the pool, we have Dylan Carter, we have Jamaica doing well in the pool. And we look forward to building on that I think that the aquatics aspect, given that we are an island state, one would want to believe that there are opportunities for medals that we need to possibly focus on. Traditionally, we are known for track and field in terms of the Olympic and Commonwealth game movement. Of course, outside of that, you have football and cricket. Speaking of that, I'm really hoping that we will get T20 on the Commonwealth Games
that'll be a
program
huge
for
development,
Birmingham
yeah.
in 2022. And I think that if that happens, I'm very confident that the Caribbean, but we won't be able to play as the West Indies.
Right,
It will be the individual country.
Just
but I
as
think
in 1998 in Malaysia.
in Malaysia,
yeah.
right. But this T20, I think that, we are all pushing very hard for it.
Yeah.
From an individual and collective position as a Caribbean, because obviously we have a reasonable confidence that the Caribbean will dominate that podium if
it comes
it
out.
comes. Yeah, man, we will.
Yeah.
T20 is something that in the Caribbean we're very good at, and I would love to see it become a Commonwealth Games sport.
Well, I'd love to see that too,
This
and I'm
is
sure
T20.
quite a lot in Trinidad and Tobago will be hoping to see TNT perform, and the Caribbean, of course, especially here in TNT where they love their T20, as you know. There's going to be looking forward to that in Birmingham. So we're talking more about the Commonwealth Games and about the involvement of the para-athletes at the Commonwealth Games. That's up next. Welcome back to After the Games video ramble alongside Brian Lewis, the president of CANOC, and we're chatting about, we're actually doing a post-mortem of the 2018 Commonwealth Games. Now, Brian, there was involvement of several of the para-athletes in these games. Akeem Stewart from Trinidad and Tobago was in there participating alongside the able-bodied athletes in the shot put. We also had a competitor from Jamaica medaling in the T47 event. So these are important developments and important milestones in the development of para sports in the Caribbean.
Yeah, it's about inclusion, and I would like to see more countries in the Caribbean really invest and take the para-athlete, Paralympic, para-Commonwealth aspect of it seriously. I think there's a tremendous opportunity again in the region for that. What I really commend the Commonwealth Games Federation for is the inclusion of para athletes in the overall games, unlike the approach taken by the IOC, where there's a separate Paralympic Games. I think that was an important step, and it was great to see the Caribbean. So let's differentiate a little bit. The Jamaican athlete would have medaled as part of the inclusion of para.
Right.
And that was great. We need to see more of that. In the case of Akeem Stewart, he participated in, for one of a better word, the able-bodied aspect of it. So that was a different approach. And of course, in that, he would have made a very important statement for inclusion, and I give him credit for that. But as I said, we also congratulate the Jamaica, and what we'll work for in the future as a region is ensuring that there are more para athletes are able to qualify for the Birmingham 2022 Commonwealth Games. But Gold Coast 2018 was tremendous for the region, and we look forward to building on this. The thing about the real important and the additional importance, I should say, about the Commonwealth Games is that it is also 2 years away from the Olympic Games in Tokyo in this case. So it's a very important signpost for the athletes, the coaches, and those involved in Commonwealth and Olympic sport in the Caribbean region.
Right, and hopefully there'll be more developments in the future. What was interesting also that the medals that were won by the para-athletes counted towards the overall medal count from what the commentators were saying, which was significant. Usually, as you said, it would be separate and different games here. So we may see the likes of Akeem Stewart and so being the first line of these athletes to completely be integrated into these games.
Very much so, and I think also another important element of the Commonwealth Games, the Gold Coast 2018 for the Caribbean, was the females. The female medals coming to fore. You had, as I said, you mentioned Michelle Liahi, you had
Laverne Spencer, yeah.
You had the steeplechase medal, let's not discount that, and you had in the 100 meters the Caribbean female dominating 1, 2, 3. You know, you had the relays, and then there were other sports where the region would have made finals and people finished fourth, they came close, also not to be discounted. You had Jamaica representing the region in the rugby sevens for the first time. That also created that typical Jamaica vibe. They always bring something a little different, a little spicy to anything they're doing because brand Jamaica is such a powerful thing, and one has to acknowledge that. So, you know, yeah, it augurs well, and again, you know, it was really tremendous, the support we received from Flow Sport in bringing it live, because what that afforded the region to do was to have these special memories and special moments that we can now treasure as a people, as a region, individually and collectively.
Right, but we'll talk some more about the Commonwealth Games coming up in just a little bit. There was the no-needle policy that was violated. 2 athletes sent home from India. Brian will tell us more about CANOC's view on that coming up after the break. Welcome back to After the Games. Now, during the 2018 Gold Coast Games, 2 Indian athletes were sent away for violating what is called the no-needle policy at the Commonwealth Games. Now, no Caribbean athletes, thankfully, fell afoul of that. Brian Lewis with us, the president of CANOC. What are CANOC's policies regarding to this in particular?
We are fully supportive as a region of clean sport and the efforts for clean sport, so that you'll find that there is actually a Caribbean anti-doping organization, or rather it is called in the world anti-doping ecosystem, regional anti-doping organization, and there are various countries that have their own national anti-doping organization. And where they don't have a national anti-doping organization, under the World Anti-Doping Code, the National Olympic Committee is the de facto NADO. So as a region, we all take clean sport very seriously and play true and play fair. So we are fully supportive as a region of the no-needle policy adopted by the Commonwealth Games Federation.
Right, and of course no Caribbean athletes involved. Very good news, we have
very
kept it
good
clean.
news at this point in time.
Yeah. All right. Now, also pertaining to the Commonwealth Games, where you are smack dab in the middle of the quadrennial between Olympics. So we have a lot coming up. The next, of course, is the CAC Games in Barranquilla, Colombia.
Yeah, we have the CAC Games that's coming up in July, August. I think the opening ceremony of the Central American and Caribbean Games, or CAC Games, it's going to be in Barranquilla, Colombia. It's the 19th of July with the closing ceremony scheduled for the 3rd of August. So that what you will have is that the Caribbean as a region and individually and collectively, we have to quickly put past Gold Coast 2018 and focus on Barranquilla, Colombia for the CAC Games. And then after that, in early October, we have the Youth Olympic Games. And then we have the CANOC, Caribbean Association of National Olympic Committee General Assembly. It's an election year, and you have the outgoing executive board, which was instrumental in working with Flow Sports to ensure that the Gold Coast Commonwealth Games is covered live. Keith Joseph, the Secretary General, Alfonso Bridgewater. Keith Joseph is from St. Vincent Grenadines. Alfonso Bridgewater is from St. Kitts and Nevis. Alfred Emmanuel, Alain Sorez from the French Islands. And because outside of the Commonwealth Games, the Caribbean Association of National Olympic Committees incorporates Spanish, French, and Dutch Caribbean. And that will be, so the broad spectrum of the CANOC representation will be on display in Barranquilla, Colombia, where you'll have some countries that weren't part of the Commonwealth Games in Gold Coast 2018 being part of the Central American and Caribbean Games. People like U.S. Virgin Islands. We also have Angel, fondly known as Chico Morales. He's on the CANOC executive. So we're looking forward to the Barranquilla Games. And I said it comes in July, August, and but from the terms of track and field, where the Caribbean really has a strength, there'll also be some clashes with the Diamond League. So it's up in the air whether we will have access to the absolute world best Caribbean track and field athletes.
Yeah, and outside of the CAC Games, you mentioned some of the other events, of course, the Youth Olympics, and so there's also the Tokyo Olympics is coming up, and as you mentioned earlier, the 2018 Gold Coast Games have provided an important signpost towards that and some of the performances.
Yeah, and I think that one will have to say that based on the spread of medals and countries on the podium, that it augurs well for Tokyo 2020 for the Caribbean of the region, but we also have to be mindful that the Commonwealth Games, 71 countries, the Olympics is 206, and then you will start to get other countries, so that it's going to be even more competitive in some of the flagship sports on the Olympic program. But it augurs well for the region. But there's a lot of improvements still to do, and a lot of hard work still to be done.
And an interesting item here that came out of Jamaica as the athletes came back home, the Honorable Olivia Grange, who is the Minister in charge of sports in Jamaica, she made a pronouncement about they're looking to bring the Commonwealth Games back to the Caribbean, in particular to Jamaica. Now, as you would know, 1966 was the last time the Commonwealth Games was held in the Caribbean, the only time, in fact. It was a spectacular event which ended with a world record in the relay. Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica going toe-to-toe in that one.
Trinidad and Tobago won its most ever medal haul.
That's right.
At that Games, 5 gold medals. Yep, it's fun memories for us.
And wins, of course, in weightlifting and cycling then. But it's an interesting prospect. There was some debate about that some time ago here in Trinidad and Tobago. What's your perspective on the Commonwealth Games coming back to the Caribbean?
It's about time.
Right.
And
it's been 52 years.
So just last year, we had the Youth Commonwealth Games being held in Bahamas. Mm-hmm. It was very successful, very well received, and it set the stage for the rest of the Commonwealth, and I suppose stimulated a thirst for the Commonwealth Games. I think it is a very realistic idea, and I'll be fully supportive of it, and CANOC will be fully supportive of it. I think that as a region, we can work together to ensure that the Commonwealth Games, the big Commonwealth Games, comes to the region, and that we all support each other. It may be Jamaica would be the center of it, but most certainly I would like to see it approached from a Caribbean perspective, and that we may look at sharing some events and spreading the burden, because a Commonwealth Games is not inexpensive.
No, it certainly isn't, and we do have the experience of this type of collective work before. One remembers the sunset legislation to enact the Cricket World Cup in 2007, and then the ICC T20 World Cup in 2010. So we have staged
and the efforts
before.
to stage the first ever
Caribbean
Caribbean
Games,
Games in 2009. It didn't come off for reasons now well established, but in all of these events, we have an opportunity to take on board certain lessons in how to be able to do it more effectively, and how to create a positive legacy coming out of it. We also have some successes that we could look at. I think that it is a very realistic concept, and it's something that I would like to see the CANOC and the region really get behind and us taking it seriously.
Right, so I guess the headline coming out of your interview, a clarion call from CANOC, perhaps, to get on board?
Well, I would like
Caribbean
to say that
governments?
if it is, that, as you would have indicated, that the minister in Jamaica made a very strong and definitive statement. I'm saying that it is an idea, it is a concept that I would like to see CANOC as a region, the Caribbean Association of National Olympic Committees, which also acts as the Commonwealth Games Association umbrella, supporting and working towards with partners such as Flow Sports. And you know, it is real, and it is something, whether you look at it from something I think the Caribbean can do well. Let me put it this way. It is a more realistic target than the region hosting an Olympic Games.
Well, all right. So, well, before we close up here, any final comment from you, Brian, before we let you go?
No, I would like to extend congratulations to the entire region for the successful, in more ways than one, Gold Coast 2018 Commonwealth Games. I'd like to extend congratulations and deep appreciation to Flow Sports Live for supporting CANOC in our shared vision and ambition to have the Caribbean people, the Caribbean youth and young people, witness live the achievements, the trials, the tribulations, the successes, the tears, the elation, the disappointment of Caribbean athletes at Gold Coast 2018.
It's been great having you on. Thanks so much for being here with us.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. And, you know, again, thank you very much.
Well, that's it for After the Games. Thanks so much for joining us. Brian Lewis, the head of CANOC and the TTOC, joining us on set. Onwards towards the CAC Games, we'll be monitoring with more from CANOC. Thank you very much for joining us.